Dr. Mitchell again. In this video, we will be looking at Boolean expressions. In this particular video, we're going to be focusing on how we can use relational operators to create and evaluate Boolean expressions. So what are we learning today? We will be looking at how to use relational operators to evaluate relationships between two variables, values, or expressions. We'll be looking at the different types of relational operators that we can use and recapping how a Boolean value is either true or false. So, as stated earlier, Boolean values contain either a true or false value, typically used to kind of replace, the question of, is it raining outside? Or, do I have a dog? Those are typically yes or no questions that we represent with true or false values as Booleans in our programs. So for example, if I were trying to ask the question or determine a Boolean value to represent whether or not my hair color is black, that would be true because my hair is black. If I was writing a Boolean expression to determine or to represent whether or not I was born in November, that would be true because I was born in November. So that would have a true Boolean value for that. Or if I have a cat, if I had a Boolean expression to determine whether or not I have a cat, that would be represented with the Boolean value false because I do not have a cat. I have two dogs instead. So when I am writing expressions to evaluate, we use different types of relational operators determining on the question that we're trying to ask. So for example, if I'm testing to see whether or not two values or two variables are equal, then I use the equal sign to check whether or not two values or two variables contain the same value. So for example, if I was checking to see if num students equaled 30, basically I'm asking, does the value that's stored inside of num students, is it also 30? I could also use this not equal sign or the equal sign with a slash in it to evaluate whether or not two values are not equal to each other. Depending on the programming language that you're using, this not equals might look different, but essentially we're still testing the same thing. Are these two, so for my example, is count not equal to 10? I can use the greater than symbol to check whether or not something is greater than the other. So for example, whether or not grade is greater than 70. The less than symbol to check that a value is less than another value. Or for example, high score is less than current score. I can use the greater than or equal to symbol, which again, depending on the programming language that you're using, this might be written differently. But it's still checking for whether or not one value is greater than or equal to the other. So for example, if num pets is greater than or equal to 0. Or I can use the less than or equal to symbol, so I can check to see whether or not one value is less than or equal to 3. Or for example, on a very sad day, I had less than 3 tacos. I would check to see if tacos is less than or equal to 3. So let's look at some examples of scenarios and Boolean expressions we would write to represent them. So let's say, for example, I'm trying to write a Boolean expression to use in my program to check whether or not someone is old enough to drive. So we know that in most states, the minimum age to drive is 16. So how would I write a Boolean expression to check if someone is at least 16 years old or if they are greater than or equal to 16? I could do that by writing the expression age is greater than or equal to 16. So now I'm checking whether or not they're at least old enough to drive. I can also use Boolean expression to check whether or not a number is even. The mod operator is especially useful for performing this task because, as we saw before, I can use the mod operator to see if there is a remainder left after division. If a number divided by 2 has a remainder of 0, then I know that that number is even. Like for example, 4 divided by 2 has a remainder of 0. So 4 mod 2 would be 0. I can write that as a Boolean expression by saying, for example, num mod 2 equals 0. So basically that the result of num mod 2 is 0. So let's get some practice writing our own Boolean expressions.
Take a moment to pause the video and write a Boolean expression to check if the average of grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3 is at least 70. And by at least 70, I mean greater than or equal to 70. Okay, I would write this expression as grade 1 plus grade 2 plus grade 3 divided by 3. So I'm evaluating that expression to find the average. And then I'm checking if the result of that expression is greater than or equal to 70. Okay, pause the video to write a Boolean expression to determine if num1 is odd. Remember the example I showed you earlier.
So if I'm checking if the number is odd, then that means that there's going to be a remainder after I divide by 2. More specifically, that remainder would be 1. If I take, for example, 5 mod 2, 5 divided by 2 leaves a remainder of 1. So if I write a Boolean expression, num mod 2 equals 1, then this expression is checking whether or not that number is odd. Okay, one more example. Pause the video to write a Boolean expression to check if the temperature outside is less than 90 degrees. Okay, we could write that expression as using a variable called temp to see if it's less than 90, or temp less than 90. So just to recap, we can write Boolean expressions using relational operators in order to determine the relationship, true or false, of those two values. We can use Boolean values that represent either true or false, and use a variety of these relational operators to make those comparisons, which we'll use in some later examples. So thanks. See you in the next video where we talk some more about using these Boolean expressions.